On today's show, we are taking your questions, featuring a conversation about Isaac Okoro, Jarrett Allen's injury, and more. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astral Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning. I cover the Cavs and NBA Large for places like Diamond UPROXX, Estimations Fear the Sword. That man over there is Evan Dammarell. He is at Down Euclid. Subscribe to his Substack and Fear the Sword. Evan, we're going to do some mailbag questions today. Interesting. We're at that weird point of the season where we are going to do some bigger breakdowns of some trends and things. We got some mailbag questions that are going to help us do that. Let's get into them. So, first question comes from strange_changes on Twitter. By the way, if you want to submit mailbag questions in the future, lockedoncavs@gmail.com is the best way to do it, or DM us on Instagram, put them in the Discord.
Yeah.
Discord's
the best.
We're expanding our parameters of
because Twitter may shut down in the near future, so
or
find us elsewhere. And speaking of Discord, join up. You can come say hey to us at Cavs games. Shout out to Big Mike, aka Cat Hot Dog Guy, on the Discord server. He hit me up at the game. It was nice to meet him after chatting with him in the servers for so long. But let's sink our teeth into some of these questions.
Shout out to Jamil as well, who I met at the game on Sunday.
Yeah, shout out to Jamil too. We saw him at 2 separate occasions, not together.
Yes. Okay, so the first question is the Allen injury ringing any alarm bells? Had the team mentioned it before JB yesterday? He has looked physically limited right from the first quarter of training camp. So, Evan, what do you make of what's going on with Jarrett Allen right now?
I mean, at the top, no, the Cavs have never once mentioned that he's dealing with an ankle injury. I think physically, normal wear and tear is to be expected in basketball or any professional sport. So when it kind of came out of left field yesterday when JB said, like, oh, this is something he's been dealing with all season long prior to camp, and who knows how long he's been dealing with it. And I think it's definitely something worth monitoring going forward, and I think the Cavs being proactive on it and letting him rest Sunday against the Timberwolves was probably a smart move in the grand scheme of things. Maybe not in the micro sense where you're like, oh, they lost the game, and if they had Jarrett Allen, maybe they'd have an easier time against Gobert and Cat. But in a more macro sense, and look at me using marketing terms, it makes sense, and I'm not overly concerned. I think now that it's in the ether and known, I think it's definitely going to be something that everyone is monitoring going forward. And also, if you put it this way, the Cavs can't get fined if they made it known he has an ankle injury and they decide to rest him in certain nights. Because they could just tag it on that ankle injury instead of saying it's like he's old or it's load management.
Yeah, so you look at Allen, I think I think it would be fair to say he has not been quite as good as he was last year. I think I don't think he's been great. I think he's been very good, but I think last year he was better. He's not been as good around there. He's not been as good around the rim this year. I think is the first thing. Like, he has not been as efficient. Jackson Flickinger wrote about this in his things we learned this week for the Sword. Check that out right now. But he has not been quite as just like destroying people at the rim. Maybe that is something to do with like Garland has missed time. But there's just been like times where he has missed bunnies where I'm just like, okay, like Jarrett Allen, I didn't feel like miss this last year. Right now, Evan, last year 78% at the rim, that was a career high. Right now he's at 66%, which would be a career worst percentage, and his worst since his rookie season when he was 19 and a half years old. It's like he's just not been as good in that sense where most of his shots are coming is right at the rim. He's a lob dude who dunks a lot, and right now he's taking the fewest shots he's ever taken near the rim. It's at 64% of his shots are there. and he's making the fewest of them in his career. So like he's just not been as efficient on offense, and I think tape bears that out. I think the numbers bear that out. I think he's just been like just a little not quite as good, and maybe this has been an ongoing injury thing. Maybe this is kind of contributing to it. I would also say, like, I would wonder, and this is something I feel like I kind of should have asked Sunday, and maybe I'll just bring it up in general when I'm back, and we'll discuss that tomorrow while I'll be gone for a couple of days. But I wonder if like how much they fell off when he goes down last year, and they're just thinking like, look, like when the season is actually like full go and we need all of our hands on deck, let's play the long game here. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I wonder if it's just like we don't need to put our foot on the gas so much right now, and like let's make sure Jarrett is right for the last 12 games of the season, as opposed to him being right for like this random game early, still relatively early in the season.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I guess statistically and numbers-wise, and yes, the eye test-wise, you do think something does look a little off. And I, like you said, attributed it more to the lack of Darius Garland because Donovan Mitchell just frankly doesn't throw lobs, and that's not part of his passing game, but he does want to facilitate the offense. I mean, like you saw Mitchell try to make an effort with Allen. It was more so like a lob pass in the sense that Allen was sitting in the paint, and then Allen would finish the play himself, but it wasn't like the bread and butter the Cavs rely on, which is like the Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell pick and roll, Jarrett Allen pick and roll. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe that is a factor. I think more so it's the lack of Darius Garland, just having a guy who can consistently click with Allen like he has from just the get-go when those two teamed up together. And we'll just monitor it going forward injury-wise. Like, I'm not overly concerned, but like you said too, if there's opportunities in the season and the Cavs are in kind of a rare spot where they play Sunday and they have 2 days off before they head to Milwaukee to play the Bucks, and then they have a day off before they play again on Friday against the Hornets, and then they have a little bit more of a busier schedule the following week. So if you can afford opportunities to rest some of your key guys at certain moments, and maybe you just know, like, hey, we have enough depth, we have enough star power between Garland and Mobley, and then possibly Mitchell as well. If like Allen's injury is more serious, well, I think they'll be okay. But it's just something I think just worth monitoring now, because like I said, it's in the ether. The Cavs have now made it known that like Jarrett is dealing with an ankle injury, and we'll see if this seriously has an impact on him, or if it's just going to be random nights like, hey, he has the night off because that ankle's still not 100%, or it's still kind of bothering him, and we'll just watch how this progresses as the season goes on.
Look, is it how serious is the ankle injury? Like, I think JB Bickerstaff will now just probably be peppered with questions about Allen, and whenever Allen like does his next, media session, whether it's on the podium or someone gets him in the locker room for the folks that travel with the team to Milwaukee on Wednesday, or maybe someone gets him at home on Friday, like you will probably see about this. By the way, I will say there was Kelsey Russo that wrote a really nice Jarrett Allen feature that people should go read if they haven't, and subscribe because paying for journalism was good. But all right, we're gonna come back after this break. We're gonna do another mailbag question, which is basically just about like angst and things. So we'll dive into that after this. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Sweatblock.
Oh, an old friend.
Yeah, they're back, baby. Christopher, not me, but another Christopher, wore a sweater every day to school, even in the hot Texas summer. See, I don't live in Texas, so this can't be me. No one likes to have their sweat seep through their shirts. It's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, and it keeps you from looking and feeling your best. Now, with Sweatblock, Christopher, again, not me, can now wear any shirt without sweating thanks to Sweatblock. He was able to fix his problem with Sweatblock. Sweatblock wipes were invented by a doctor, and they're guaranteed to work or you don't pay. They call it the Sweatblock Dry Shirt Guarantee for a reason. If Sweatblock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweatblock risk-free today. Save 20% with the promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Promo code LOCKEDON, 20% at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon if that's your jam.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, and the actual cost is closer to $200 plus. That's right, you could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. And there's this app I love that takes care of all of it for me, and it's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. Some users call it the best app they've ever used, and I agree. The app shows you all your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want for you. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't even know you were paying for. You may even find out that you've been double charged for a subscription or anything else in between. And to cancel the subscription, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes off to the moon and takes care of the rest. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds of dollars per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
All right, we're back. Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell, Locked On Cavs, your team every day. Remember, subscribe to us on YouTube.
Look at the cohesiveness between us and the Cavaliers organization with Rocket Money as the sponsor.
Don't even say that because you're just giving me chills up my spine. They're fine on their own. They don't need us. I'm good. You're really effing with me, but okay. So next question comes from @MightyRubber on Twitter. Philip Seymour Hoffman of the Avi. You love to see it.
Great.
Why so much pain lately, Chris? Why so much pain? First of all, that sounds like a question for your doctor. Consult a medical professional if you're having lots of pain. But Evan,
or if it lasts more than 4 hours.
I feel like there's some angst. Look, 4-game losing streak, all that stuff. Like, stuff's weird.
Yeah, it's early season stuff. I think the parasocial relationship because of social media and just the interactivity fans now have because of social media and YouTube and other avenues has kind of made like this weird like pocket subculture that only exists online and doesn't expand much else outside of it. I mean, look, in the grand scheme of things, this is a really good Cavs team. They're a really fun Cavs team. I understand, like, it's fun to have them be a big part of your life. I mean, let's be frank, it's both a part of Chris and I's life. It's our well-being in this podcast or our writing ventures and everything else in between for that. A lot of our friends, too, but it's also healthy and normal to have interest in hobbies outside of it and maybe not put all of your eggs in one basket when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's always just where I've been with this. And I think parasocial becoming a term is how I can accurately summarize it, where when Chris and I are getting death threats in our mentions because of a certain player, that's when you know the fandom's gone a little too far. And again, I'm not policing you on how to be a fan. You rock on and do whatever the heck you want, but don't let players being out or frustrating losses in 4 of those in a row be the make or break tone setter of your week. Have a good meal, go for a walk, get some exercise. Like Chris knows I woke up in an awful headspace today and I went to the gym and I feel a lot better after that. So just make time for what matters. And if that's the Cavaliers for you, do you, but it's also healthy to explore other things too. And that's just me putting on my therapist hat, and I'm going to take it off, put it on my desk quietly so I don't bang it. So editor Jake Stevens will do more work and pass the rock to Chris. What do you think?
Look, I think 4-game losing streaks aren't fun if you're a fan. As someone who tweeted the other day that I wanted to drink bleach after watching Tottenham Hotspur, like I understand that these teams you get emotionally invested in can cause you issues and cause you anxiety. Like you should be invested in this. So I think it's fun to be invested in stuff.
Look at us just being good cop, bad cop here.
But I agree with you largely in that, like, I also just don't think there's, like, I look at this and I don't think there's, like, evidence to make me think that something is, like, catastrophically wrong. No. You're having injury issues. Like, Mobley had a really bad game. Like, all of the stuff that is sort of...
focusing on the Timberwolves game or this losing streak in general?
I'm saying in general. I'm just saying all of these little things that have sort of added up. Like, it doesn't feel to me like there's, like, this big... Like, this doesn't feel to me like last year where, like, the wheels came off and Mobley got hurt and Allen got hurt and Garland carried such a burden. And, like, they got to the playing game and it's, like, it just felt like the ceiling of the team was kind of taken away, right? Like, by all those injuries and everything that went on. That doesn't feel to me what's going on here. I think there's room for improvement on both sides of the ball. I think this team hit such a high early season that this come down certainly probably can't be fun as well. But like I also like this is we said this on Monday show. The Cavs are 4th in the league at net rating. They have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. Like I think they're going to be really good. If I was going to bet right now on like who I think the best teams like in the East are, I think the Cavs might be my 3rd best team in the East. I think the Bucks are the best team. I think Boston is ahead of Cleveland just based on they're 10-3, made the finals last year, but the Cavs do have 2 wins against them, which is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Cavs right now for me are like the third best team in the East, and like that they're gonna be fine. They're fourth in the East in terms of standings right now. They're tied with the Hawks at 8-5. Like the Cavs are gonna be really good. They are good. Yes, they've lost 4 in a row. I don't suspect that this is like the world is coming down around you. I think ultimately like they're gonna be fine and really good. And if something changes, I can guarantee you that like if there is something happens or things go wrong, and we can say, okay, we will come here on this podcast and tell you this is what's wrong, this is why it's a big deal, all that stuff. I think there are issues. I don't think there are issues that would make me think that that Rome is burning here.
Yeah, Rome is burning is hyperbole at the end of the day, and maybe I'm not the best person to ask this about, obviously, just because Chris correctly forecasted many moons ago. I have become a little bit more cynical and more level-headed when it comes to the Cavs and just my coverage of the Cleveland sports scene in general, just because I have learned how the sausage is made, and maybe this just kind of jaded me a little bit along in the process, but yeah, it's fun to have fun, and it's also okay to ride the emotions of when they lose, but you shouldn't live or die based on the result of a basketball game. There's so much more to life to that. Like, go look, like, if it's daylight and you can see outside, or even when it's dark because it's winter right now and outside my house, like, look outside. There's a beautiful world around us, and there's so much more to it, but figuring out that healthy balance is fine. And yeah, like Chris said, this Cavs team is going to be fine. Statistically speaking, they are a very good team on both ends of the floor. The last night against the Wolves were missing Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen, two very key components to what they're trying to accomplish this season and just what they do on a night-to-night basis. And I agree with the assessment. I think Milwaukee's the best team in the East. They could be the best team in the league, depending on how you feel about them. And
yeah, if you did tell me today, I think Milwaukee, like, they're probably going to win the title. That's like where I'm at.
But right now, like, for me, I think the Cavs are firmly in the thick of it, but yeah, Boston's ahead of them. I just think Joel Embiid is just so incredible after what he did the other night against the Jazz. Like, that's worth noting too. And just the Cavs are still in a really good spot, because let us not forget, a couple months ago, Donovan Mitchell wasn't on this team, and we were kind of looking like, okay, is this Cavs team a possible playoff team, or are they going to be fighting for a play-in spot? Adding Donovan Mitchell is probably going to add 10-plus wins to their win total at the end of the day, and also just how they shape up in general. So we'll see how it goes long term, but the Cavs are going to be fine. And maybe if it's bothering you so much, it's healthy to take a break and take a cleanse, such as Chris is. One, to avoid the tax fraud from the U.S. government. He's going offshore and going dark for a little bit. But two,
I am absolutely not doing that, to be clear.
The offshore Locked On Cavs accounts need to stay clean, Chris. That's all I'm going to say. But other than that, sometimes it's good to log off and maybe just take a little bit of a cleanse, because it is an 82-game grind for the players. But the fans who really diehards and will live and die by this Cavs team, it can be exhausting to go through a full 82 games of this when there's a little bit of just like choppy waters at the beginning of the season, especially after such a strong start.
Just do something that makes you like takes your mind off of life. Working out's great. I love to. Evan knows I'm a big proponent of just going on random walks, even when it's cold. But look, I get it. Like, if you're feeling angsty and all this stuff, like, I get it. Like, you catch me watching Tottenham on a bad day, terrible, just bad vibes all around.
Surprised you're not supporting Liverpool after Bill DiFilippo bought them, but again, that's why you're going offshore.
Bill DiFilippo did not. This is like insulting to Bill that you would suggest you would buy Liverpool. Just
he tweeted the other day saying, "Folks, I bought the Liverpool Football Club."
Yeah, but just
you're off Twitter, so you wouldn't see this.
It's true, but also just knowing Bill's like diehard Holland fandom stuff. If you want a really good laugh, honestly, just like, honestly, get into the World Cup. We're USA. Let's go. Let's beat England on Black Friday. I won't even drink tea that day. That's how dedicated I am. Okay, after the break.
Lizzie's in a box. The U.S. men's national team's going to put the rest of the country in there with her.
Harry Kane's going to lock up Bukayo Saka, not Harry Kane. Jedi Robinson going to lock up Saka on the wing. Harry Kane also plays for England, but he Tottenham, so I'm like, if he could score like a goal and the U.S. wins like 2-1, I'd be cool with that. All right, we'll be right back after this. Going to dive into one last mailbag question, centered on Okoro and some more angsty things. But want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. To play, pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win. If you pick it right, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, and a bunch more. Wow. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. It's that easy. Don't forget to enter our promo code that is LOCKEDON at the sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Okay, back here on Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. All right, Evan, we got 5 minutes we're going to do here on our first questions that I think thematically go together before we have one more we'll do for about 5. Okay, the first question. Well, most one seems to have been deleted. So, Bazinga 991169 asks, what is the plan for players such as Isaac Okoro in the future if they don't stop performing? And Evan, here's the answer to this. The Cavs move on from them in some way, and they have to go replace them. The challenge is 2 things. Number 1, you have to compete in the open market for those other players via trades when you've already traded a lot of firsts for Donovan Mitchell, as was worth it. And you won't have as much free agent money because your best players are tied up. Your money's going to be tied up in your star players. Secondly, you're not going to have a high draft pick when the years you do have your first-round draft pick to get a player to maybe fit with what you need. That means you got to nail scouting, you got to nail development, that's all that stuff. So it's harder in theory, but what they will do is they will move on and they will go to trying to find other players to do some of these things. That's very clearly what will happen there.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. And Chris and I touched on this a little bit ago, where we're starting to have that tough conversation about Isaac Okoro, and just like if he doesn't keep putting together, maybe he will for another team. And if you're the Cavs, you're not obviously rushed on this. Like, yes, he is extension eligible this summer, but let's be frank, I don't think he's going to be signing one with Cleveland this upcoming summer. But at the same time, like, even if they don't, the Cavs still have him as a player on their payroll. It's just the last year of his contract before he enters restricted free agency, and if it's still not working, they can pull the plug closer to the trade deadline next year. But that's also just, yes, this is sunken cost fallacy that's associated with this, but you're walking a fine line there too, because the longer you wait, maybe the worse Isaac Okoro looks on offense and just as a non-functional player on offense, the lesser his value is on the open trade market. And I think that's a fair argument. And maybe if he just can't put it together and like a team approaches Cleveland and they make an offer for Isaac Okoro, that is something of a serious upgrade for them, whether it's wing depth or maybe, let's just say Ricky Rubio is just not fully together even after the full recovery and everything else, and just like he's not the same player. Maybe you find a more feasible backup point guard as well, or just a dynamic guard you can play alongside Mitchell and Garland next to Rubio too. You explore that avenue as well. Like, I think there's ways to get creative with this. Like, we talked about this on the show many moons ago, where like you package Okoro, Stevens, and Dylan Windler, just looking at them as contracts and also what they bring to the table as players. That gets you about 11-12 million or so in trade assets there, and you have to get creative when working the margins when you're the Cavs, because you empty the clip to go get Donovan Mitchell, which, yeah, that trade's paying off in spades. It looks like a great move for Cleveland at the end of the day, but now because of it, like, you have to get creative, and especially like when teams like Toronto still have their assets, or teams like the Knicks are still have a ton of picks, but they like are obviously just really thumbing their nose at the cap situation in general. Or you look at teams like Miami, they're historically aggressive. Like, we'll see how the season goes for Cleveland overall. We'll see how the season goes for Isaac Okoro. Again, if they get an offer, they cannot refuse. Like, it'd be remiss of them not to take it. But at the same time, it's they're not too pressed. And maybe the game against Minnesota is a positive sign of things hopefully to come. But we're almost 15 games into the season at this point for Cleveland, and Isaac Okoro's had maybe one noteworthy game offensively. It's troublesome right now to kind of figure out where he's headed next.
Yeah, we've hit that a ton. Yeah. All right, so next question. We got a couple other angsty things from two friends of the show. Number one, this is from Corey Walsh, the sort of Core host of It's Cavalier with Mac Perry. Check that out. So how much of the fourth quarter struggles is just learning to gel versus sloppy offensive possessions in late games? And then Jackson Flickinger asked, how concerned should we be with the struggles of Garland and Mitchell lineups, and more specifically the starting five? Overall, Garland Mitchell lineups have a minus 5.8 net rating, and the starting five has a negative 9.3 net rating. So I'll tackle Jackson's thing first. Like I think I would not particularly worry about that. Like, it is still early in the season. Number stuff can be weird. Some of the stuff takes like a long time to really balance out. You know, like some of there's been some weird games. It's not, I'm just considering the Mitchell Garland stuff is really not that big of a sample yet. It's not a big deal. You know, like there are lineups on every team that you can go to, and it's like, oh, this doesn't work for whatever reason. And like that's just the reality of like it being still relatively early, even though we think of this as like very deep into the season. Like I'm looking at like Tatum and Brown. Like Tatum and Brown right now, as good as that duo is, they're it's like good. It's better than, it's not as negative as the Cavs, but like they're negative. They're almost a point per 100 possessions worse with those two on the floor together. And like that's just a quirk. And like, yes, there are lineups that they've played with those two guys, particularly their starters, and particularly one with Derek White that is like very, very good. But like overall, they're negative just because they're figuring stuff out, and like it's early in the season, and it's still like pretty small sample stuff. So like that's just noisy. I think the starting stuff is noisy. Well, what I think about the starters is that like a small sample, but also like you could use probably one person that fits like just a little cleaner in what you need them to do than what maybe LeVert does as a shooter, and I think that could just make it function better, but that's not like a new thing. That's just sort of like I maintain that like a guy who could bomb from the corner would make a ton of sense there.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know, it's not really much to raise alarm over, like you said. There's just not a lot of sample data to kind of just extract like what isn't going to work for the Cavs and this pairing with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I said Jonathan Mitchell, excuse me, but we'll see how it goes. I think there's going to be growing pains no matter what. It's pretty clear that there are going to be growing pains just because Garland has such a high usage rate, Mitchell has such a high usage rate. They got to figure out how to coexist with one another and at the same time play winning basketball with two Goliaths down low and Mobley and Allen as well, just because they have a lot to figure out. Like, it's not going to be a seamless fit, but it's a lot better off than it initially was if you're looking at it, if you're the Cavs.
The other thing, the late game stuff, I think that feels to me like very much just you're learning how to gel, getting comfortable with each other. I think some of it is sloppiness and just like needing to figure stuff out and find the right balance and find stuff that works and hitting the right buttons. But that also doesn't feel like a mega deal to me. No,
it's not a huge deal to me either. It's just, JB said it the other day, like, is he concerned? He's like, no, and I'm also learning how to like communicate with some of these guys and just the newer guys on this roster and just kind of figure it out. Like, it's a coaching aspect, it's a player aspect. It's going to take time. Again, people kind of look through the lens of like 1 or 2 games or even this 4-game win streak or losing streak rather. And let us not forget, like about a week's time ago, the Cavs were riding one of the biggest win streaks in the NBA, and these are the part of an 82 game grind. Like, if some games aren't going to be perfect, some games are going to go a lot better than you expected, and some games are just going to be weird. And some of these games in the losing streak were weird. Some of these games are just kind of smackdowns at some point, especially in the fourth quarter. And I think it's just maybe figuring stuff out in the half court is going to be a little trickier for Cleveland because they found a lot of effectiveness in fast break scenarios. And I think JP said the other day, like, yeah, the teams are forcing us to play in the half court, and it's just kind of, we have to become comfortable. We, as in the Cavs, have to become comfortable in being uncomfortable at times. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's not going to be perfect. And once they figure it out, they'll be okay. So we can always circle back to this question, like come Christmas time or even after the new year. Like, if the Cavs are still kind of struggling, maybe it's a little bit more concerning. But for now, you're like, you just kind of watch this unfold, and it's something definitely maybe worth putting a pin in and keeping an eye on if you want to like really obsess over that stuff.
I would like to. You just need to see like more and more and more of it. Like it
Correct.
would benefit this team in the long run to like play if they go through, even if they lose. Like I would maintain that like if they play a really close game on Wednesday against the Bucks, would be good for them. If they can get a playoff series this year that like puts them through the muck. Like if they're let's say they're the 3 seed and like they get Miami or something in round 1, I think that would be really good for them. Like have to go through it against a team that is really well coached, that is veteran laden, that even if you win in it, and it takes 6 games or like, and you just get pushed, that's the kind of thing that like ultimately those experiences will make the Cavs better in the long run, not just for this year, but like next year and the year after, and maximizing this Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen era. Like that's what this is about. This year, obviously, you're trying to win as many games as possible. They're going to go as far as they can. There's no reason not to. But this is also about just like you're still in the figuring it out phase to some degree, and I think like them going through a gauntlet of some kind would be
beneficial.
I think it would be do them a lot of good to go through that sometimes. And also just like for us analyzing and fans watching it, I would like to see them. It would be useful to see the film, to get the numbers and just see what it looks like in really tight games over a long duration, and have like a bigger sample than just like 1 or 2 games. Like that's just it. Like I just want it. Like basically, my whole take on the Cavs right now for like everything is like, let me see a little bit more of it, and let's just see how this evolves. Like that is like my couch answer for kind of everything right now. That's boring, but that's just kind of where my head's at.
It's boring, but it's also the truth at the end of the day. Like, yeah, people can say it's a cop out, whatever you want to say it is, but like it's the truth. Like, it's good to see what is effective for the Cavs during this winning streak, and it's also good to see what has been ineffective for them during this kind of mini losing skid they're on. And like, eventually they'll figure it out and kind of just balance in general and just move forward from there. But right now, it's just kind of sinking your teeth in and figuring out like what isn't working for the Cavs. And obviously, if this is the coaching staff and they're obviously clearly paying attention to this, going back to the drawing board and maybe erasing some of the stuff that isn't working and maximizing the potential of what you have with this roster, all while trying to build towards future success next season after that, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, and look, they can make a trade. Maybe there's a bold trade coming that will reshape the roster in some ways by the deadline or in the summer that will change some of this as well. That's just the reality of where this at. Okay, thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. This episode was produced by the amazing Jake Stevens. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available in the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow looking ahead to Cavs Bucks. Maybe doing some East contender stuff, just kind of stating where things are at and what could go right for the Cavs to snap their 4-game losing streak. Hope you join us for that. Subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and all your social platforms of choice. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Be well. Talk to you tomorrow.